Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The San Francisco 49ers have one of the most talented teams on paper, and they've dealt with some of the most drama off the field. Are they headed for disappointment in 2024? Also, Daniel Jones was not impressive in his preseason return, but how big of a problem is this really? And the early returns on the new kickoff rules are aggressively mid.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The San Francisco 49ers not totally settled as we head into the 2024 season. Brandon Ayuk's future up in the air. Trent Williams not satisfied with where he is, and yet they are not just the favorites, they are the heavy favorites in the NFC West, in the NFC. Brian Peacock from Locked On 49ers, and of course, Peacock and Williamson joins me now. And Brian, as you look at this NFC West, the Seahawks have a new coach. The Rams have one of the best coaches in the league, but the 49ers never seem to be that worried about the Rams. And the Cardinals, albeit a fun story right now, and a, hey, maybe they could be better than we thought kind of story, they pose no threat to the 49ers. So as you look at this division, what would worry you the most?
I think health of the 49ers has been the thing that's derailed every bad Kyle Shanahan season in San Francisco. Essentially, 2018, vibes were high. You just spent a bunch of money on Jimmy Garoppolo. You think you found your quarterback kind of out of nowhere, and then he goes down early in the season. They're a bad team. They end up with the second pick in the draft. You draft Nick Bosa, and then even in the fourth round of that draft, they were drafting Mitch Wishnowsky, a punter. I'm like, you guys, is this team really that good where you should be drafting a punter in the fourth round? And they were the number 2 overall pick in the draft. They ended up being in the Super Bowl that year. So they were right about it. They were pretty good in 2019. 2020, more injuries. Bosa, Jimmy G. And all of a sudden, they're not a great football team. They're like, oh, we're drafting high. Let's go get a quarterback. And so they ended up finding their quarterback, but it wasn't the guy they traded 3 first-round picks for. Ended up being the 7th rounder in the 2022 draft. And then all of a sudden, they're healthy again. And they're in the NFC Championship game. They're in the Super Bowl. And so when they're healthy, they're a good football team. And so as long as
they're an injury away from being in back-to-back Super Bowls, right? If the quarterback stays healthy, they're in back-to-back.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe they would have won one. Well, how crazy would that story have been with Brock Purdy's rookie season? And so, look, as long as Brock, and think what you want about Brock Purdy, but he's playing at a level that with the players they have has been phenomenal. And they have so many stars on the team. Even if you take one out, I think you're okay. But when it starts to fail and when the whole structure starts to fall, as if, maybe you end up trading Brandon Ayuk. Well, now Debo's dinged up. Well, then Christian McCaffrey, who's a running back with the most touches in the entire league. He's played 40 games the last 2 years. That's a recipe for a running back to be hurt in his late 20s, as Christian McCaffrey is. As much of a cyborg as he is, he's very realistic he could get hurt. Trent Williams now angling for a new contract. He's older. So it could start to fall apart, but you would need to start to pull a lot of those pieces out for the whole Jenga to kind of fall down. And where the 49ers are right now, the Jenga is still maximum height. And so there's really nothing that I would be worried about derailing a San Francisco 49ers team, except for themselves currently. Even though there's a lot of good football teams out there, the 49ers are just too good in too many places.
That being said, Brock Purdy got a vision into what life could look like without his all-star team of Avengers against the New Orleans Saints. 2 of 6 for 11 yards, almost threw a ridiculous touchdown or interception. Definitely not a touchdown, back across his body.
Yeah,
it was surprising just to see him out there, minus so many of the other guys that you'd expect to see him play there. Any concern that, like, Brock Purdy, to your point, if there's an injury, Trent Williams goes down. We saw last year when this offense was not at its peak, it was because Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel were not 100%.
There's one more factor that actually I forgot about, and it's the good God above. If he starts dropping down some rain, because that was one of the times that Brock Purdy struggled, was throwing the football in the rain. He was a little squirrely in that preseason game, and we saw glimpses of that in his rookie year. Didn't see as much of it in year 2, where he was just trying too hard to make a play. And I don't know what he was doing there. It was a preseason game. I don't look too hard into that. It's not like he's trying to win a job and be perfect out there. Right. Like he was just playing some backyard ball. He just wanted to get reps, and apparently it was up to him, and he's the one that wanted to play. But I'm with you. what kind of you're not like even building timing with the guys that were out there. Your fourth string running back, neither one of your starting left tackle or left guard are out there. So he's getting pressured in his 2 short drives that he was on the field. He had like his wide receiver 6, 7, and 8 out there. And so I don't know what year George Kittle wasn't on the field. So what kind of rapport are you even building with your team? That's one where you're like, okay, I get you want to play, Brock. Sorry, you're not playing. That's where the coach has to be like, I'm the coach, you're the player, you're sitting down. I'm not putting you out there in that. It was kind of silly for him to be out there.
I can't have you on and not ask you about the Brandon Ayuk situation. It sounds like there's a new contract offer on the board here. The 49ers reportedly getting into that $30 million sort of range. You were wondering the last time we talked why they couldn't just meet in the middle at 28. And it sounds like they've come up even further. Have you changed you have been steadfast, by the way, saying you think Brandon Ayuk is going to be back with the 49ers. Any reason to change your mind right now?
Especially that Ayuk's people have got terms with the Steelers, and the reports are that the 49ers and Steelers have something pretty much figured out if they can't get it done with Brandon Ayuk. And the fact that they still haven't traded him is what tells me that Ayuk wants to be there. The Niners want him there. They've just got to figure this out, and they're still working on it. This is what I think happened, though, which is why a signed contract isn't done, is because I think what the 49ers did, if I'm reading the tea leaves, reading all the reports correctly, Brandon Ayuk's people don't like the fourth year and how that is involved with all of this. So what it tells me is they probably said, okay, you want $30 million per year. You want your agent to be able to go to Schefter and say, Brandon Ayuk signed a deal worth $30 million a year. Well, we're not messing with the first 3 years that we've been offering you all along. Here's some funny money in year 4. Now it looks like a $30 million a year deal. And then people are like, oh, well, that's not really the $30 million a year deal we wanted. So that's kind of the feeling I get about what this contract is currently. It's probably $28 million per year. It's probably very similar. And, Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract was like that a little bit. $30 million per year. And it's like, is it really? And so that's probably what they're trying to figure out, if it's going to be a rock solid $30 million per year, if it's going to be a funny money $30 million per year contract.
Stay up to date on the San Francisco 49ers all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On 49ers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Giants are feeling something about Daniel Jones' preseason debut, but is there anything to really be gleaned from that performance? Before we answer that, the Commanders made official what everyone had already predicted about their Week 1 starting quarterback. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, of course. Well, we have a little something different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and then you can cancel anytime. For that $5 bet, you could take a look at an NFL future. FanDuel has odds on which quarterback will lead the NFL in passing yards. Patrick Mahomes not favored. CJ Stroud is FanDuel's favorite to lead the NFL in passing yards at 7-1. Mahomes right behind him at plus 750. Following them, Dak Prescott 9-1, Jared Goff 10-1, Joe Burrow 11-1. I'm being told by my producer that he likes the last one. Can't imagine why. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Washington Commanders named rookie Jaden Daniels their starting quarterback. Fantasy football players may want to take note.
The Washington Commanders have newly painted practice fields in Ashburn. They've also got a newly made official starting quarterback. This is David Harrison of Locked On Commanders podcast. And on Monday afternoon, we met with Dan Quinn for a press conference, and head coach Dan Quinn opened it up by making official Jaden Daniels will be the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders when the season kicks off Week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dan Quinn says that Jaden Daniels has earned the position, but also earned the respect of his teammates with his professionalism and the way he prepares. Jaden Daniels says it's a blessing, and perhaps the biggest part of this is the team only needs him to focus on being the best quarterback he can. Coach Quinn says the time to put on the cape and be the superhero will come, But for now, just focus on continuing to be a great teammate. For more on that and everything Washington Commanders, check out the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa opened up about his relationship with former Dolphins coach Brian Flores. Tua has thrived in current coach Mike McDaniel's offense, but the 2 years before McDaniels arrived were tumultuous for Tua behind the scenes. In an interview on the Dan Le Batard show, Tagovailoa said, to put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have someone else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. How would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? Look, his wallet agrees too. He got paid this offseason, but the quality of life, the quality of a boss that empowers you, how do you put a price tag on that? The LA Chargers got quarterback Justin Herbert back on the practice field after he suffered an injury to his plantar fascia. Color Chargers coach Jim Harbaugh ecstatic, even if you can't tell.
Great. I felt like the music should be playing. I thought I heard music. Voices of Angels, maybe. It felt great. Looked great. Capital G. Like no drop off. Pinpoint accuracy. And looked really good.
The New York Giants didn't exactly get a vote of confidence with their starting quarterback in preseason week 2 against the Houston Texans. Daniel Jones threw a pair of picks, including a pick 6. He went 11 of 18 for 138 and the aforementioned 2 interceptions. Patty Traina from Locked On Giants joins me now. And this is not a situation that the Giants would like to be in. They were hoping Daniel Jones comes back. It's the beard. He's a different guy this time. But maybe not. What have you seen from Daniel Jones?
Well, Peter, I've seen inconsistency. And this is year 6 for Daniel Jones. And some people will say, well, it's rust. He didn't play for 9 months because he was rehabbing the ACL. Okay, fine. I get that. But we've been saying this now every year he's played. It's been the same song and dance. And, all right, I can buy maybe it's rust with some of the accuracy issues. Maybe some of the timing is off. What I don't buy as being rust is the decision making. Yeah. Some of which is really, you sit there and you watch and you say, what in heaven's name is he doing? And you would think, at this point, again, he's entering year 6 and he's making mistakes that a rookie would make. And I don't know if that's just him feeling like he's got to make a play regardless. I don't know if that's just him not trusting what he's seeing. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that they better figure it out fast with this guy. Otherwise, he's going to cost them a few games.
Well, and that's the question for me, Patricia, because if he does cost them a few games, let's say, this is not a front office and a coaching staff that have proven a ton, at least since they arrived in New York with the Giants, although they did have that surprise playoff run a few years ago. So that makes me wonder, okay, what is the pressure to say, hey, if the Browns want to move on from one of their quarterbacks, Jameis Winston or Tyler Huntley, could the Giants be in the market for one of these veterans to say, hey, look, we got to win games now, and we might need to insulate ourselves against a Daniel Jones regression here?
I don't think they would do it this year. This is a very complex offensive system that they run, and to bring a guy in who has no familiarity. I mean, if you look at the quarterbacks that the Giants have brought in over the years under Dable, they have had prior experience with him, whether it be in Buffalo or, they were guys that were on the Giants roster earlier, then got cut, but then were brought back. So I don't think it would be this year. That being said, if Daniel Jones, if Brian Dable can't fix Daniel Jones, and I really think that is what the Giants are hanging their hats on, is Dable's reputation as a quarterback whisperer. But if he can't fix this guy and get him on the right track and get him back to playing like he did in 2022 when he took him to the playoffs, I think they're going to start over next year, get a guy in here on a rookie deal, because think about it. You bring a guy in here on a rookie deal, and what is it? You get him for 4 years, about $50 million or thereabouts. And Daniel's making what, $47 million or something this year. So the economics favor you if you bring in a rookie quarterback and you start from scratch and you let Dable develop that kid to what they need for this offense. So that's what I think will probably be the scenario if Daniel Jones proves not to be the guy.
One of the reasons why they didn't do that this year was Malik Neighbors ended up being their selection, and he has electrified this fan base, certainly, and has flashed certainly in the preseason as well. Are we going to be looking here in a year or two, Patricia, and go, this was a mistake by the Giants to not go quarterback when they did?
No, I don't think so. I think, that's a common belief by a lot of people, but I don't think it's a mistake. Look, if Malik Neighbors proves to be like the next great thing, like an Odell Beckham Jr. when he was here in his prime, how do you call that a mistake? Now, the problem with the Giants is they did try to move up. We saw that on Hard Knocks. We had reported that even before Hard Knocks, but the cost was too much. And this was a team that had a lot of holes that they had to fill. So they were not in a position really to give up the farm. The New England Patriots, they were never really serious about trading out of number 3. It would have taken a Ricky Williams type of trade for the Patriots to say, okay, sure, we'll trade. And they weren't really serious. I mean, you got that impression when you watched Hard Knocks. So no, I don't think it's a mistake. You can't go wrong with a number 1 receiver. And I always said that the mistake the Giants made is when they drafted Daniel Jones, they didn't have the talent in place around him. The offensive line was suspect. They didn't really have, they had Saquon at the time, but they didn't really have top receivers. They had just traded away Odell Beckham Jr. That's the mistake they made. So now they've kind of rectified a lot of that, where now they've got a decent offensive line, knock on wood. They've got a number 1 receiver and a pretty good receiving core, a young receiving core, decent tight ends. The running game should be fine. Now, if they do move on, the next quarterback's going to walk in and basically have a nice supporting cast around him, which is how it should have been when they drafted Daniel Jones back in 2019.
Stay up to date on the New York Giants all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Giants on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the new kickoff rules didn't seem to be adding much. The league wants to add more intrigue and entertainment to kickoffs. As Peacock and Williamson discussed, the early returns aren't inspiring.
The new preseason format, I don't like it, Matt. And I don't like the new kickoff either, Matt.
Let's start with the new kickoff. So it seems like every return ends up between the 25 and 30, like every time. And I think that
I saw one go all the way back to the 32, Matt.
That's like a big deal. If you get past the 30, it's like, woohoo, I mean, very rarely do you see one get inside the 10. And I have another thing that I have a problem with the kickoff. So I'm at Steelers-Bills the other night, and the Bills kick off. And they got a flag. I forget what they did. I think they jumped off sides. They left too early or something like that. And the Steelers had a bad return, and they said, let's re-kick it when we'll include the penalty. Well, all they do is move the tee back 5 yards, and he still kicks it in the landing zone, and it makes no difference at all. But the penalty didn't hurt them one bit. I mean, he still going to put it in the landing zone. I'm like,
the return team so dumb. The returning coverage teams don't move?
No, I didn't know that either. I didn't know how penalties work. All they did was move the tee backs, and everyone else just stays the same. So it's like you didn't penalize them at all. Nothing bad happened. Why not jump off sides every time? And I thought that was weird.
One thing I did notice with the returns is, remember last week it was pretty obvious that the coverage units had a big advantage and were on top of the offensive players or the return team already. Once the returner started taking off, I noticed the blocking units retreat a little bit more now. They're trying to create that space back again.
So they can flip their head around.
Yeah, so they could get around and get to a space and then try to create some blocking angles. So there's kind of like a little bit more of a retreat and then start to block. And I don't think it really changed anything, but that was at least one of the techniques I saw out there around the league. So that was something that special teams coordinators absolutely saw too.
The problem is the penalty. What the league wants is for teams to decide it is too great a penalty to kick it into the end zone. The touchback rule wasn't working. It's why they changed it from the 20 to the 25 and now to the 30. But it's not enough. It's clearly not enough. And we knew that already because the penalty for kicking the ball out of bounds, a surefire way to make sure the team will not return it, put the ball at the 40-yard line. The NFL already knew what the number was, where teams would go, we have to avoid doing this at all costs. If what they really want to do is incentivize more returns and at the same time making it safer, which the new alignment rules are set to do, then they have to make it so that if you don't kick it in the correct region, the ball goes to the 40. And then teams will get creative with squib kicks and all sorts of other ways to make sure the ball lands there, because if the ball lands in the area where they want it to land and keeps going into the end zone, it cannot be downed in the end zone. So if you want to do that, you have to make the penalty for kicking it through the back of the end zone the same as kicking it out of bounds. They have to treat the end zone like it's out of bounds. And I promise you, the teams will figure it out. And finally, it's a brave new name, image, and likeness world, and Mike Gundy hates living in it. The Oklahoma State football coach laid down the law with his team. I told the players there's no negotiating now. Portal's over. All negotiations history. Now we're playing football, just coaching and play football. There will surely be no negative repercussions from this. Surely. He's a man. He's 40. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will we have clarity with Jamar Chase and the Bengals? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.